My brother called me the week before Thanksgiving and said Mom had been having dizzy spells. Nothing serious, he said. She just needs someone around for a few days. You know how she gets. I did know how she got. I also knew that I had a client deadline on the Monday after Thanksgiving, a software audit for a mid-sized logistics company in Austin that I'd been working toward for 3 months. 40 hours of contracted work, $8,400 on the line. My brother knew this too, because I'd mentioned it twice on our last family call. It's just 4 days, Lily, he said. I'd do it myself, but Sandra and I already booked the cabin in Vermont. Non-refundable. I should have asked more questions right then. I should have asked why he booked a non-refundable cabin when our mother was having dizzy spells. I should have asked why Sandra's family trip took priority over our sick mom. I should have asked a lot of things. Instead, I said, okay, I'll drive up Wednesday morning. He said, you're the best. Seriously, I drove 4 hours from Atlanta to Asheville on the Wednesday before Thanksgiving with my laptop bag, my work hard drive, and enough groceries to cover the long weekend. I had a plan. I would help Mom through the holiday, work early mornings before she woke up, and be back on the road by Sunday evening with enough time to finish the audit before Monday's deadline. I had everything mapped out. I was proud of myself for being flexible. I pulled into my parents' driveway at 2 in the afternoon. My brother's SUV was not there. Neither was his wife's car. What was there? Parked along the curb and overflowing with luggage and car seats and a half-deflated beach ball, was a minivan I didn't recognize. My mother opened the front door before I even got out of my car. She was in her good cardigan. Not sick person clothes. Her good cardigan with the pearl buttons, the one she wore to church and to holiday dinners and to any event she wanted to look put together for. Oh good, you're here, she said. Come meet everyone. I walked inside and there were 4 children in my parents' living room. 4. Ages ranging from what looked like maybe 2 to maybe 9. The oldest was sitting on the couch playing a game on a tablet. The 2 middle ones were running in a loop around the coffee table. The youngest was sitting in the middle of the rug, eating a fistful of crackers and staring at me with enormous unblinking eyes. Standing next to my mother was a woman I'd never seen before, already in her coat, already holding her keys. This is Sandra's sister, Kendra, my mother said. She and her husband are flying out tonight. Last-minute trip isn't that exciting. She just needs someone to watch the kids through the weekend. I stood in the doorway of my childhood home holding a bag of groceries, and I said very slowly, Mom, where is your husband? My mother blinked. Your father left this morning. He drove up to meet your brother at the cabin. They wanted to get there early to get the good fishing spot. I put the groceries down on the floor, right there in the entryway. Not on the kitchen counter. On the floor. You told me you were sick, I said. My mother had the grace to look slightly uncomfortable. I have been having dizzy spells. Are you having one right now? Well, no. When was the last one? She paused. Last Tuesday. I looked at Kendra. Kendra, to her credit, looked like she genuinely wanted to disappear through the floor. She had the look of someone who had been told a version of events that had not included the full picture, and who was now understanding in real time that she had been part of something she hadn't signed up for either. I'm so sorry, Kendra said. I was told you were coming home for the holiday and that you'd offered to help with the kids. I didn't know. I need a minute, I said. I walked back out to my car. I sat in the driver's seat and I called my brother. He picked up on the 3rd ring. I could hear my father in the background laughing at something. Hey, you made it. How's Mom? She's fine, I said. She's in her good cardigan. There are 4 children in the living room. Silence. Marcus, I said, and I want you to notice that I used his name, because I almost never use his name. You told me Mom was sick. She has been having, last Tuesday. She had dizzy spells last Tuesday. That was 10 days ago. You called me 4 days ago and told me she needed someone around. I paused. You were already at the cabin when you called me, weren't you? More silence. Then, Sandra's sister really needed someone, and we knew you'd be home anyway. I was not going to be home anyway. I drove 4 hours. I have a deadline Monday. I have $18,400 of work due Monday morning, and I drove 4 hours because you told me our mother was sick. It's just a few days, Lily. They're good kids. I don't care if they're great kids, Marcus. That is not the point. Mom can't handle them alone. Then maybe Kendra shouldn't have booked a trip if she didn't have childcare. Look, he said, and his voice shifted into the tone he'd been using on me since we were teenagers. The reasonable older brother voice. The voice that meant he'd already decided the outcome of this conversation. We're already here. Sandra's sister is already at the airport. You're already there. It doesn't make sense to blow everything up now. It's 4 days. I sat in my car in my parents' driveway, and I looked through the front window at my mother, who was now helping the 2 middle children put on their shoes while Kendra said her goodbyes. 4 days, I said. 4 days, he said. I'll owe you one. I want to tell you that I drove away. I want to tell you that I called a babysitting agency and left a check on the counter and got back on the highway and finished my audit in my own apartment, like a reasonable adult who respects her own time and her own boundaries. I didn't do that. I went back inside. I've spent a lot of time since then thinking about why. Part of it was the kids. Because Kendra had already left, and they were just 4 children who didn't know what was happening. And the youngest one had fallen asleep on the rug and looked so small that my chest hurt. Part of it was my mother, who I did love, even when she did things like this. And part of it, if I'm being honest, was 28 years of being the younger one. The single one, the one without a husband or kids or a real reason to say no. My brother had a family. I had a laptop and a lease. In my family's math, that had always meant I had more flexibility. So I stayed. The kids' names were Jalen, who was 9 and serious, Amara and Darius, who were 6 and 5 and basically a single 2-headed chaos organism, and then the baby, who was 2 and whose name was Cooper and who would only respond to Cooper and who would only respond to Coop, and who was, objectively, the most exhausting human being I had ever encountered in my life. My mother helped for approximately the first 18 hours. By Thursday morning she was tired and retreating to her bedroom by 9 a.m., citing her blood pressure, and leaving me alone in the kitchen making scrambled eggs for 4 children with very specific and contradictory opinions about eggs. Jalen didn't want them runny. Amara didn't want them touching her toast. Darius wanted them with ketchup, which, okay, fine, and Coop had picked up a single piece of egg, examined it very seriously, and then placed it on the floor. I stood at my parents' stove at 8:30 on Thanksgiving morning, and I thought about my apartment in Atlanta, which was quiet, and my coffee maker, which made very good coffee, and the audit spreadsheet that was sitting open on my laptop waiting for me. I called Sandra. She answered immediately, which surprised me. I think she expected I was calling to talk about what time we were eating. I need you to understand something, I said. I kept my voice very even. I have a work deadline Monday morning. I will be here through the weekend because your kids are here and I am not going to leave 4 children without an adult. But I need to be able to work. I need quiet time in the mornings before they wake up, and I need your mom or someone else to be on call if there's an emergency. I am not a babysitter. I am doing this because I was manipulated into this situation and I want you to know that I know that. Sandra was quiet for a moment. Then she said, Marcus said you offered. Marcus said a lot of things that weren't true. Another silence. I'll call his mother, she said finally. She can come help. Thank you. My mother-in-law, well, my brother's mother-in-law, Grandma Ruth, showed up Thursday afternoon with a casserole dish and an energy that made me want to cry with relief. She was 71 years old and had raised 5 children and had absolutely zero patience for nonsense. She took one look at the situation, set down her casserole, and started organizing the children into some kind of structured Thanksgiving activity involving paper and crayons and a surprisingly firm voice. You go work, she said to me. I've got them. I worked from 2 to 6 on Thanksgiving afternoon while my mother napped and Grandma Ruth ran what could only be described as a very efficient holiday craft operation. I got through 12 of my 40 audit hours. It wasn't enough, but it was something. We ate dinner at 6:30. My mother had rallied enough to make her green bean casserole. Grandma Ruth's dish turned out to be a sweet potato pie that Jalen ate 2 pieces of and then declared was the best thing he'd ever had in his life, which made Grandma Ruth look like she'd just won something. I video called Marcus and my father at 7. My father asked how the kids were. My brother asked if there was enough turkey left for him when he got back Sunday. I said yes because it was easier than saying what I was actually thinking. That night, after the kids were in bed and my mother had gone to sleep, and Grandma Ruth had headed home with promises to come back Saturday, I sat at the kitchen table with my laptop and my cold coffee, and I opened my audit spreadsheet and I worked until 2 in the morning. I got up again at 5:30 Friday. Here is what I learned about small children that weekend. They do not care what time you went to sleep. They do not care that you have 40 hours of contracted work due Monday. Coop, specifically, woke up at 6:15 on Friday morning, making a sound that I can only describe as a car alarm in the shape of a toddler, because he had lost his stuffed elephant somewhere in the sheets, and this was, apparently, a 5-alarm emergency. I found the elephant. I made the oatmeal. I put on the cartoon. I opened my laptop. By 10 a.m., I had answered 47 questions ranging from, "Can I have more juice?" to, "What is a mortgage?" That was Jalen, who had found a piece of mail on the counter, to, "Why is the sky blue?" to, "Are you our new babysitter?" That last one was from Amara. She asked it very matter-of-factly, the way 6-year-olds ask things, without any filter or cruelty. Just genuine curiosity. "No," I said. "I'm your mom's sister-in-law's sister. In-law's sister. Ink like a cousin." She considered this. "But you're babysitting us." "Yes, so you're our babysitter." There was no winning this one. I gave her a juice box. Saturday was when things started to fall apart. My client called at 11 in the morning. His name was Derek and he was perfectly pleasant. But he was calling to say that he'd sent over 3 additional files that needed to be included in the audit, and he needed everything by Sunday night, not Monday morning, because his board meeting had been moved up. I was standing in my parents' backyard watching Darius attempt to teach Coop to do a somersault when I took this call. Coop kept rolling sideways and landing on his face and seemed to find this hilarious. Under other circumstances, I also would have found it hilarious. At this particular moment, I was doing math in my head about how many hours I had left and how many hours I needed, and the numbers were not matching up. "Sunday night," I repeated. "If possible," Derek said. "I know it's short notice." I told him it was fine. I hung up and I sat down on the back porch steps and I put my head in my hands for just a minute. Just 60 seconds of not being okay. Then I got up and I went back inside and I called my brother again. He didn't pick up. I called my father. He picked up on the second ring. "Dad," I said, "I need Marcus to call me back today. I have a work situation and I need to figure out coverage for the kids tomorrow." My father made a sympathetic sound. "What's going on with work?" I explained. He listened. When I finished, he said, "Lily, I'm sure you can figure it out. You've always been so capable." I want you to understand that he meant this as a compliment. My father has always thought, "You're capable," was the nicest thing you could say to a person. It did not feel like a compliment in that moment. It felt like a door closing. I called my mother's neighbor, Mrs. Patterson, who had known me since I was 7, and who occasionally helped out with childcare in the neighborhood. She came over for 3 hours on Saturday afternoon, and I sat in my old bedroom with the door closed, and I worked without stopping, and I ate a granola bar for lunch, and I didn't think about anything except the spreadsheet in front of me. When Mrs. Patterson left at 5, I had finished 29 of my 40-plus hours. I had until Sunday night, roughly 36 hours. I needed 11 more hours of focused work. With 4 children in the house, 2 of whom would be awake by 6 a.m., that meant I would be working every available minute. No sleep. No margin. My brother finally called me back at 7 Saturday evening. "Lily, hey, sorry, I had no signal most of the day. I need you to come home tomorrow," I said. "What?" My deadline moved up. "I need to be able to work all day Sunday. I need you to come back and take over. We're supposed to leave Sunday afternoon anyway. I need you here by noon." Silence. "Then, that's a 4-hour drive. We'd have to leave at 8. Yes. Sandra's mom was going to make a big breakfast. Marcus. I used his name again. I drove 4 hours because you told me our mother was sick. I have spent 4 days taking care of 4 children I was not told I would be taking care of. My client moved up my deadline and I have 11 hours of work left. I am asking you to leave your vacation 4 hours early. That is what I am asking. Very long silence. I'll talk to Sandra, he said. He did not call me back that night. I put the kids to bed at 8:30. Jalen asked if his mom had called. I said I was sure she would call soon. He nodded with the particular dignity of a 9-year-old who has learned not to expect too much, and that look on his face sat in my chest like something heavy. I worked until midnight. I got up at 5 a.m. Sunday, and I worked until the kids woke up at 6:30. My brother texted at 8:15, Sandra's not feeling great. Probably going to stick to the original plan and leave this afternoon. You've got this. I put my phone face down on the kitchen table. My mother came into the kitchen and poured herself coffee and looked at my face and said, carefully, "Everything okay?" "No," I said. "It's not." And then I told her everything. Not the softened version. Not the version where I said I was fine and just a little stressed. I told her that Marcus had lied to get me here, that I had a deadline tonight that I was in serious danger of missing, that I had not slept properly in 4 days, and that I was angry. Actually angry. Not sad, not hurt, not willing to make this easier for anyone. Angry. My mother was quiet for a long time. She turned her coffee mug around in her hands. She looked out the kitchen window at the backyard where the kids were going to want to play in approximately 45 minutes. I should have told you the truth, she said finally. I knew what was happening and I should have told you. Yes, I said, you should have. Your brother asked me not to say anything, he said you'd say no. I would have said no. Because I had a deadline, because 4 days of childcare is not something you spring on someone. She nodded slowly. She looked older than she usually did. I'm going to call him, she said. Mom. I'm going to call him right now. She picked up her phone and she walked out of the kitchen and I heard her voice in the hallway. Quiet and then not quiet, and I stood at the stove making oatmeal for 4 children I hadn't known 6 days ago and I felt something loosen in my chest. Not all the way, but a little. My Aunt Carol arrived at 11:15. This part I did not expect. Aunt Carol is my mother's older sister. She lives 40 minutes away, and she is, to put it plainly, the person in our family who says what everyone else is thinking. She has never once in my memory softened a message for anyone's comfort. She came through the front door with a tote bag and her reading glasses on her head, and she looked at the scene. 4 children, my exhausted mother, my face. And she said, I heard. She looked at me and she said, go work. I'll call you if someone's bleeding. I went to my old bedroom and I closed the door and I worked for 6 hours. Marcus and Sandra arrived at 2 in the afternoon. I heard them come in. I heard Marcus's voice in the kitchen and the kids running and then my Aunt Carol's voice, which did not sound warm. I kept working. At 4:30, I sent the completed audit to Derek. All 43 hours, fully documented, on time. I sat at my old desk in my old bedroom, and I put my face in my hands, and I breathed for a minute. Then I went downstairs. Marcus was in the living room with Darius on his lap. He looked up when I came in, and he had the expression of a man who had been talked to about something recently and had not entirely enjoyed it. Lily, he said. I finished my work, I said. Good, that's good. Aunt Carol was in the kitchen. I could hear her and my mother talking in low voices. Sandra was taking the kids upstairs for baths. The house smelled like the leftover pies someone had heated up. We need to talk about what happened this weekend, I said. I know. He shifted Darius off his lap gently. I know we do. Not right now, I said. The kids are here and I'm tired. But I need you to understand that I'm not okay with what happened. You lied to me to get me here. You knew I had a deadline. You left anyway and then you wouldn't come back early when I asked. He opened his mouth and then he closed it. I'm not asking for an apology tonight, I said. I'm just telling you where I stand. Aunt Carol appeared in the kitchen doorway. She was looking at Marcus with an expression that I had only ever seen her use on people who had done something genuinely difficult to defend. Your mother told me everything, she said to him. Not meanly. Just clearly. The way she always talked. The dizzy spells that weren't happening, the trip you booked before you called your sister, the Sunday morning text. Marcus had the grace to look at the floor. I've been thinking, Aunt Carol said, about what to do with the lake house. The lake house, my grandmother's lake house, which Aunt Carol had inherited and which she'd always said would stay in the family, available to everyone. We'd all grown up spending summers there. Marcus took his kids there every 4th of July. I've been thinking, she said again, that I'd like to put together something more formal. An agreement. About who uses it and when and under what conditions. She paused. I'd like Lily to be part of drafting that agreement. Marcus looked up. I think, Aunt Carol said, that people who can be counted on should have a say in how family resources are managed, don't you? It wasn't a dramatic speech. She didn't raise her voice. She said it the way she said everything, like it was just a practical matter that needed to be sorted out. But Marcus understood what she was saying. I understood what she was saying. My mother, who had appeared in the doorway behind Aunt Carol, understood what she was saying. Marcus nodded slowly. Yeah, he said. That's fair. I drove back to Atlanta that evening. 4 hours, same as the drive up. I stopped at a rest stop outside of Greenville, and I sat in my car, and I ate a gas station sandwich, and I thought about the last 5 days. The thing about being the capable one. The flexible one. The one who doesn't have a husband or kids, and therefore allegedly has so much more bandwidth than everyone else. The thing about being that person is that it takes a very long time to understand that flexibility is not the same as availability. That being good in a crisis doesn't mean you owe anyone your crises. That you've always been so capable is sometimes just a nicer way of saying, we were counting on you not to make this difficult. I thought about Jalen asking if his mom had called. I thought about Coop and the lost elephant. I thought about Amara asking if I was their babysitter with such uncomplicated honesty. Those kids didn't do anything wrong. They were just kids, dropped into a situation the adults around them had manufactured. I thought about Aunt Carol walking through that door. I hadn't called her, my mother had. Something about that mattered to me more than I could quite explain. I got back to Atlanta at 10:15. I unlocked my apartment and it was exactly as I'd left it, quiet, small, mine. I made tea and I sat on my couch, and I opened my laptop and there was an email from Derek saying the audit looked great, everything exactly what they needed, looking forward to working together on the next phase. I closed the laptop. I sat there for a while in the quiet. My brother texted the next morning, I'm sorry, I really am. Can we talk this week? I waited until afternoon to reply, not to punish him, just because I wanted to be ready to have the actual conversation, not the version where I said, it's fine, because it was easier. Yes, I wrote back, but I need you to actually listen this time, not manage me. Listen. He replied with just, okay. I don't know what changes after this. I don't know if one conversation fixes the pattern of 28 years, the assumption that I am the most movable piece, the one with the most give. I don't know if my brother fully understands what he took from me that weekend, not just the sleep and the work hours and the vacation I hadn't taken yet, but the specific exhaustion of being lied to by someone who knew exactly what he was doing and did it anyway because he was confident I would handle it. What I know is that Aunt Carol is revising the lake house agreement, and I am going to be part of that conversation. What I know is that my mother said, I should have told you the truth, and actually meant it. What I know is that I finished the audit, and Derek's company just reached out about a 6-month contract. And what I know is that I'm not answering calls about dizzy spells anymore without asking a lot more questions first. Some people learn to count on you because you're reliable. That's fine. Reliability is something I'm proud of, but there's a version of being counted on that's actually just being taken for granted, and those two things can look identical from the outside for a very long time before you finally understand the difference. I understand the difference now. I've thought a lot about what actually happened that Thanksgiving. Not the logistics of it, the kids, the audit, the missed sleep, but the deeper mechanics, the way it was constructed. My brother didn't make one careless decision, he made a sequence of very deliberate ones. He booked the cabin first. Then he called me about Mom's dizzy spells. Then he framed it as, just a few days. Each step was calculated to get me in that house before I understood what I'd agreed to. That's not a mistake. That's a choice. And here's the thing about choices. They compound, not in any mystical sense, just in the plain human sense, that the way you treat people teaches them what to expect from you. Marcus had been making this particular choice for years, in smaller ways. Every time "you're so capable" was used as a reason I didn't need to be asked properly. Every time my lack of a husband and kids was quietly treated as surplus availability. None of those moments were dramatic. But they added up to a blueprint, and that blueprint said, "She'll handle it." What changed this time wasn't that I got angry. I'd been quietly angry before. What changed was that I said it out loud, to my mother, to Marcus, in plain language, without softening it for anyone's comfort. That's harder than it sounds when you've spent your whole life being the one who makes things easier for everyone else. Saying, "This is not okay and I need you to actually hear that," feels like breaking something. It feels risky. But the alternative is staying in a pattern that only works because you keep absorbing the cost of it. My Aunt Carol showing up that Sunday wasn't luck. My mother called her because I finally told my mother the truth. That's cause and effect. Honesty created the opening for someone with the standing to say something to actually say it. I didn't need rescuing. I had already finished the audit. I had already made it through. But Carol's presence meant that Marcus couldn't quietly reset to normal the way he always had before. The lake house conversation wasn't punishment. It was just accountability taking a shape he could understand. Jalen asking if his mom had called is the thing I keep coming back to. 9 years old, sitting on the couch with that careful dignity kids develop when adults have let them down enough times that they've learned to manage their own expectations. He didn't do anything wrong. He was just a kid whose parents made choices without thinking through what those choices looked like from his eye level. I can't fix that. But I can be the kind of adult who at least doesn't pretend everything is fine when it isn't. Because pretending doesn't actually protect anyone, it just delays the reckoning. The 3 things I know now that I didn't fully know before: integrity means telling the truth even when the truth makes a holiday dinner uncomfortable. Intelligence means recognizing a pattern before you're 4 days deep in it and running on 5 hours of sleep. And resilience isn't about being the person who can handle anything thrown at them, it's about being the person who eventually puts down what wasn't theirs to carry in the first place. I sent Derek the audit. He signed the 6-month contract 2 weeks later. Marcus and I had the real conversation, and it was hard, and it's not finished. My mother and I talked about her role in it, which was the conversation I didn't know I needed more than the one with my brother, and I went back to my apartment in Atlanta, and it was quiet, and it was mine, and I did not feel guilty about that for even 1 minute. That's new. That part is genuinely new.